Morning, everybody. How many of you have been to... Hang on, that shouldn't be happening. Have been to Wentworth Point or Rhodes at this point? Fair number. How many of you have cycled across Bennelong Bridge? Good to see. The rest of you are about to learn something. Look, today my challenge is to tell you about this project, which was essentially, and I've got some script here that I'll read, unlocking high density development potential, building transport infrastructure and connecting waterfront communities, but without controversy. Sounds impossible, particularly in Sydney, but in May 2016, the opening of Billbergia's privately funded Bennelong Bridge across Homebush Bay was unanimously celebrated by the community and welcomed by both government and opposition parties. So, you know, that's not going to happen too often, so I've read that bit. The real thing that we want to talk to you about is that the bridge was gifted to government on completion, but it had taken 5 years of planning to work with 26 government agencies to satisfy all of their needs to convince them that this was a good idea. Because RMS's first approach... How many here from RMS, by the way? Oh, good, I can speak openly. Except for one. RMS, their view when we first raised it with them in 2009 was that if we wanted to build a bridge, we'd build it in Grafton or Kempsey or somewhere. And I said, but what about these communities? And they said, well, you know, they're just communities. They don't necessarily need to be connected. But Rhodes and Wentworth Point were two peninsular communities, but both were in transition as urban renewal spaces. In the case of Rhodes, alienated industrial and heavily contaminated. In Wentworth Point, just industrial uses on prime waterfront land. So, to look at this slide, that is a 1 kilometre radius from the centre of Bennelong Bridge. It's walkable, it's flat. 50% of the area in that circle is water and 40% of the land area is open space. And yet that is currently home to over 25,000 people, and at full build out we'll have 50,000 people. It's a city within a city going on midway between Sydney CBD and Parramatta, adjacent to Sydney Olympic Park, and not too many people know about it because it hasn't been controversial. But it will wind up being one of the densest parts of Australia, but with a high standard of public amenity and connection to more public transport options than almost any other part of the country. There's the aerial view along the Parramatta River, with Wentworth Point in the foreground and Rhodes in the background. lot of fun. But that couldn't be possible without a connection that a lot of government agencies didn't want or see the need for, but the community desperately wanted and needed. And that bridge now connects to communities. It used to be an 8-kilometre drive, a 30-minute drive, and now it's a 30-second bus ride or a 7-minute walk, 400 metres across the bay. And importantly, those two growing communities now have far less need for their cars, and it's all about getting them out of cars. And walking, connecting with the cycling ways through Sydney Olympic Park and through the suburbs of Rhodes around to the Bay Run. There's 35 kilometres of cycleways going west and an even greater number going east, and all connected by the bridge. But getting people out of their cars for commuting is more of a challenge when you can get them to cross the bridge and walk when it's fine and it's a beautiful part of the world. But for people making essential trips, getting them out of cars when it's extreme heat or pouring rain or desperately windy, they haven't got a plan B. So we've also proposed a shuttle bus to Parramatta Council. It was previously agreed before the council mergers in 2015 that the buses would start running as soon as the bridge opened. But it provides people with a plan B when they know that they can go out confidently walking, taking kids in prams or going to the shops, but getting home again when there's a change in the weather or when you've had an exceptionally successful shopping expedition, it can be difficult. And we were seeing at Wentworth Point collections of shopping trolleys that would just appear. And from Rhodes Waterside Shopping Centre and IKEA, you've probably all experienced the shopping trolleys that lock as you leave the shopping centre because they've got that wheel lock. But notwithstanding, we collected 70 shopping trolleys which had been dragged across the bridge because it wasn't possible to walk home carrying their purchases. And so we now provide a shuttle bus that supports that mode shift on a permanent basis so that people can confidently get rid of the second car. And in particular, now we're designing apartments where parking is optional, so you don't have to have a car as part of your normal infrastructure. When we opened the bridge, we expected a few people to turn up, and we thought it might be 3,000 or 4,000 people. We had 30,000 people come to the bridge on opening day for the cutting of the ribbon. It wasn't actually cutting of one ribbon, it was cutting of 100 red ribbons, symbolising the pieces of red tape that had to be dealt with. When you're trying to do something good and connect communities and provide a healthy, active community with access that they couldn't dream of through a government source. So we and the fellow landowners at Wentworth Point, we spent $63 million delivering that bridge to government. And the government is now very proud of what they've achieved. But in addition to connecting, it's also a placemaking exercise because, as you see from some of those images, it's quite dense. But one of the things about going vertical is it gives you more ground plane to give back and create spaces and open spaces. And so Community Days is a program that we've held continuously since 2009 when we first started talking to the people at Wentworth Point about how their community might change over time. And in 2009 there was 1,800 people living at Wentworth Point. But we've kept that conversation going and taken the community with us along the journey as the peninsula was rezoned from industrial and a maximum of 4 to 8 stories, and as you see, the buildings there are now some at 25 stories. but again without controversy, because the community knew that this was part of getting improved access and transportation connections, but they also get more open space around their feet. If the whole peninsula at Wentworth Point had been built as originally planned under the 2004 master plan, it would have been all buildings and no open space. But now you've got healthy open spaces in exchange for some verticality. So here's the notion of the bus. We put this program together in 2013, 14 and 15 such that it could be open when the bridge opened. But with the change of local government, there was a rethink by Parramatta, and they weren't sure that the community would really want to have shuttle buses. But it connects both communities to all of the primary linkages from the new school, the ferry wharf, the shopping centres, and importantly the railway station. Good morning, folks. This is the first morning of the Baylink shuttle. We're here to welcome all the customers to their first day of riding the free shuttle service between the ferry wharf, the Wentworth Point School and the Rhodes railway station. So we've got the Lord Mayor of Parramatta and John Kinsella from Billbergia Group here to welcome people on and off the buses. We're here at Marina Square Shopping Centre, and we're in front of the library and community centre. And here you have the Baylink shuttle picking up its customers to take them on an express service to Rhodes railway station. Lord Mayor, now that the Baylink shuttle is a reality, what are your thoughts after riding it for the first day?
Absolutely fantastic. And you could see the commuters were there. I haven't seen any advertising for it, but you've got full buses now.
Well, John, you've put $21 million into the Baylink shuttle as an offer to Parramatta Council for community benefit. What are your thoughts on day one?
Day one is surprising. To see the buses full already, it's only, 7:30 now?
So it's making a splash?
I think it's going to be wonderfully successful, and really appreciate John and his team putting it on before a VPA is signed or anything. It shows a great commitment to the community, which I think is going to stand you in good stead. So in the first 6 weeks of the trial, and we're doing this as a 3-month trial, which we're funding absolutely, so we're tearing up $100,000 a month to demonstrate to Parramatta Council that there is community support for the shuttle bus. And it's not hurting the pedestrian and cycle numbers, but it is getting people out of cars, particularly at peak hours. And in the first 6 weeks, we've carried 80,000 passengers. In the same period, STA buses have still got increased patronage over their numbers last year for the same period. So it's an extraordinary success story. But the decisions are yet to be made, and so we've got another 6 weeks of the free trial to go. And we hope that it'll be a 20-year service that brings about permanent behavioural change in relation to mode shift and active transport on the two peninsulas. So happy to take any questions.